Welcome back to the channel. Today we're working on something a little bit newer. This is a 20, I think he said a 15 or 16 Dodge Ram. And the truck is really nice. There's a bit of paint starting to come off the bottom of the door, the bottom of the fender down here. There's not a bubble or blister in the box. There's one little stone chip down on the corner we're going to touch up. But the tailgate is mint. The box is like 99.9999 mint, which is shocking. Now this vehicle's got, we're in Ontario, Canada. This thing's driven in the winter. As you can see, it's still filthy. Weather hasn't been cooperating. It's been raining, so everything is just dirty. Otherwise, I'd have it a little cleaner. But we're going to fix one rocker. Now, the other rocker is okay for now. It'll likely rust through at some point. Could be a year, could be 5, we just don't know. This vehicle I should say, was super well undercoated. They pulled the lights, sprayed it in. They went through the back of the inner rocker and sprayed it all in. But something I've noticed with some of these Dodges, if you spray from the inside into the inner rocker, there's a divider in there, and sometimes the oil doesn't come out in here. So what happened in this rocker is the whole wall right up to that ledge was rusty and flaking off. And basically back here we had pinholes, but I was going to do half, and I decided to keep cutting. And then I thought, we got the whole rocker, why patch panel it in? We'll do the whole thing. Now this is one of those where you buy some Chinese pair of rockers off Amazon, and in Canada it works out to $300 for the pair. Now the metal seems stout. It's nice and thick. We did put a primer on the back because these are cheap, so they're not going to come with your weld-through primer, nothing like that. The only downside I could see, if a guy was real particular, the rocker here doesn't quite tuck in. You'd have to split, push it in, and weld it up. But because of what this truck is and what it's used for, we're not going to worry about that at all. Now we do have to repair the bottom of this fender, and one thing we noticed, gaps are really good on this truck, right to here, but from here down, the fender's in a bit. So when I pull that out, we might go just a touch more, half it up, and I think that's going to work out just fine. And again, this isn't precision. This is not restoration work. This is body work. Now to install this, we used our flange tool / hole punch. And you can see we blasted a whole bunch of holes through the bottom. Now in between some of them welds, and we tried to do it so that the welds look nicely spaced out. But between some of those welds, there's little dips in the bottom where it can leak out. Now the original rocker did have a bunch of little weird rubber plugs. There must have been a gazillion of them in the bottom. They were never taken out, which is why there was no oil in there. So I'm going to mention that to him just to let his oil guy know to do them. But we're going to drill a couple holes through the top, maybe 2 on this, and then 1, 2, probably 4 holes in all, and put rubber plugs in, just so that somebody can oil. Well, we're going to oil inside the rocker. When this is done and painted, I'm going to spray that full of goop before he takes it home. Now the downside with this one, I went ahead and I got the crew cab. This is just the king cab, I guess you'd call it, or extended cab. So this is a short door with a 6.5 foot box, or 6.4, whatever it is, where the other one is longer with a shorter box. So we got the crew cab. Usually that solves our cab corner problem, but this one was getting a little thin, and I had to cut more meat off it just to make sure we had no rust left. So I'm gonna make a little piece, wedge it in there, and weld it all in solid right into the back, and call that a day. We're probably going to paint it up to the body line, right up to here. This is modern and it's white, and if we shoot down here, we go by the paint code. I've done a lot of these white Dodges. They seem to match for me every time, and honestly, there's a shadow break here with the body line, so if it's a touch off, we'll live with it. Owner's good with it, I'm good with it. So that's what we've been up to. Now these don't go all the way up because they're not the expensive ones. The good ones are expensive. They come up to here someplace and you weld them all on in the seam. Those are preferred. But if it's a work truck and you just want to get rid of the rust and get something going on, now this truck is allowing us to do it because the metal from about here up was totally fine and no rust behind. The rust was all down low. So on this truck we were able to use these, and we just laid this flat on top of that flat, and we did a seam. Now I know guys are gonna right away talk about butt welding versus lap welding. Skins are lapped. Down there's 2 or 3 pieces of metal lapped. Those seams are lapped. Look, this whole truck from the factory is lap welded together. Now, could rust potentially get in between? Probably not, because we used our primer in there on both sides of the metal, and that's a weld through cold galvanizing is the one I like to use, and it works pretty good for me. So I'm going to say it's fine. Now, some guys will also say, oh, cut and butt it and weld it in solid. Again, this is not a restoration. This is a modern truck. We basically welded it about every 2 inches all the way front to back. Then we came up on top, we skipped each one, and we put a little tack just to pull those in. Now what I like to do is I crank my heat up a little bit higher than I normally would. Even though this modern metal is thin, if you get to where it isn't rusted, it will take heat. And if you count 3 half seconds, 1, 2, 3, and stop, with a little extra heat, it's going to put a little more weld than you want. You're going to have to grind those off, but it's going to hold. And I'll put 1, 2, maybe 3, then I'll hit them with the air, and as that shrinks, it should pull tight. I'm using the shrinkage to my advantage here, right? So what we will do later, we'll sand this all down, clean it up, we'll run a bead of tape, and we'll seam seal this edge. We're going to use a 2-part epoxy style seam sealer, and that'll never come off of there. And then we'll do our, I believe, judging by down here, there's some sort of a gravel guard built into the Dodge paint job. So we're going to do the same thing, and we're going to put it on not thick because we want to achieve that same texture. Now you can buy black, silver, and beige gravel guard, and I use the Schutz gun, not the spray cans. And the difference between the colors isn't the color. The black is heavy and super bumpy, and I believe the silver is the medium, and the glue, snotty looking beige color is not too bad. Now I find on these trucks, and the same with Toyotas, they'll come up so high and just kind of fade it out, and then the paint goes on right from the factory. So we're going to do the same thing, and I usually use the silver, and I crank the air up just a touch. I think I run it about 25 to 30 off the wall, and I come back a little bit, and when I fire it on, it'll go on light and smooth. And if you don't want it to pile up, let that set, do another coat, you know, because you want to get some thickness, but you don't want it to get all crazy bumpy, like, you know, like someone stuccoing a ceiling is not what you want. Now, you got an old beater, you're cleaning it up, put lots on because you're just protecting it. Different story, and I do agree with that. But in this case, this truck is so nice, even though we don't have to make it pretty, we're going to make it so it looks really, really pretty to the eye. Now, the one thing I'll say about the cheapy Chinese Amazon fenders, rocker panels, my door gap is now slightly bigger, but we don't really care. And the reason for that is we wanted the bottom to reach. So I did have to set it on the floor and kind of push down because it's basically shaped like this, and we had to open it up a bit. And this is where it seemed to land and fit real nice. So we'll weld a little piece up in here and weld the back shut, and we're golden. So that's what we're up to. Figured I'd do a quick video. Thanks for watching.